Have you ever done the math on how long your money would actually last if it had to feed you? Not the vague version, the real one. Most people get a knot in their stomach somewhere around the second line of that calculation and quietly close the spreadsheet. It's not just you, and it's not because you haven't saved enough. The running out of money paradox is that the people who run out usually didn't earn too little and they didn't get bad returns. Two men can hold the same $1 million, earn the exact same returns over 30 years. Same numbers to the decimal. And one ends up with almost 10 million while the other hits zero in year 17. Nothing about how much separates them. What separates them is a filter almost nobody checks: the order the returns arrive in. The moment money starts flowing out of an account instead of into it, order stops being trivia and starts deciding everything. Understanding that running out of money is an order problem, not an amount problem, is the first step to making sure it never happens to you. There are three levers that control it, and by the end of this video, all three will be yours. Let's run the experiment properly, because the claim I just made sounds impossible, and impossible claims deserve a controlled test. Take 30 consecutive years of real S&P 500 returns, 1995 through 2024. Booms, two historic crashes, a pandemic, everything. Hand those 30 years to two identical accounts holding $1 million each. Two men, call them Paul and Neil. Paul receives the returns in the order history delivered them. Neil receives the exact same 30 numbers, rearranged so the crash years arrive first. First, the control. Nobody touches the money. 30 years pass. Paul's account lands on $22,424,003. Neil's account lands on $22,424,003, identical to the dollar. When money only flows in one direction, order is mathematically irrelevant. Multiplication doesn't care what sequence you multiply in. Whatever you were taught about crashes being the danger, notice what just happened. Neil, who got the crashes first, lost nothing for it. Now change one thing. Each man starts withdrawing $50,000 a year to live on, rising a little each year with the cost of living. Same balances, same 30 returns, same average. 10.9% a year, both of them. Paul, the one who got the good years early, finishes the 30 years with $9.97 million. Neil is broke in year 17. Same money in, same returns, same average. One variable changed the ending: the order. And the trigger that armed that variable was the withdrawal. The moment the money had to feed someone. Which means this isn't only a story about 65-year-olds. This math switches on anytime you live off a pool of money while markets move underneath it. A layoff runway, a sabbatical, a year your business goes quiet, an early exit from work. 30 years is simply where the mechanism is easiest to see. So let's look at it up close. Here is the mechanism, one step at a time, using Neil's actual first 5 years. Year 1, the market falls 9.1%. He withdraws his $50,000, and the loss lands on what's left. He ends the year at $863,000. Year 2, down another 11.9%. He withdraws again, $715,000. Year 3, down 22.1%. He withdraws again, $516,000. 3 years in, nearly half the money is gone, and only 150-odd thousand of it went to him. The rest evaporated because he was selling shares into falling prices to eat. That's the mechanism in one sentence. A withdrawal in a down year forces you to sell more shares to raise the same cash, and those shares are gone forever. They are not there for the recovery. Watch what that costs him. Year 4, the market roars back 28.7%. One of the best years in the entire 30. For an untouched portfolio, a year like that is a fortune. His balance moves from $516,000 to $595,000. A 29% year bought him almost nothing, because the shares that should have caught that recovery had already been sold at the bottom, converted into groceries and mortgage payments 2 years earlier. The market forgave. His portfolio couldn't, because the units that needed forgiving no longer existed. Meanwhile, Paul is living through those exact same crash years. He just meets them in year 6 instead of year 1, after the boom years have already tripled his balance. The same 22% drop that gutted Neil is, to Paul, a bad year inside a large number. The wound is proportionally identical and absolutely survivable. And now the quietest fact in this entire video. Run Neil's numbers forward and ask, at each year, a simple question. If every single remaining year went as well as mathematically possible, if we handed him the leftover returns in the best conceivable order, could he still make it? The answer stays yes through year 10. After year 11, it turns no, permanently. From year 11 onward, no arrangement of the future saves him. He goes on withdrawing for 6 more years, feeling roughly fine, balance still in 6 figures. He is already gone. The failure didn't happen in year 17 when the account hit 0. It happened in year 11, in silence, and nothing anywhere announced it. That is what makes this problem different from a crash. A crash is loud. This is a bookkeeping fact that becomes irreversible while you're not looking. So if the ending was already decided by year 11, a better question is, when did the deciding actually happen? 2 men and 2 orderings can't answer that. It could be luck. 10,000 orderings can. So that's the next experiment. Take the same 30 returns and shuffle them 10,000 times. Every shuffle has the identical 10.9% average. We're not simulating different markets, we're simulating different orders of the same market. Run the same $1 million and the same withdrawals through all of them. 4.5% of the orderings go broke, 1 in 22. Identical returns, identical average, and still, for one man in 22, the sequence alone is fatal. Among the survivors, the spread is absurd. The luckiest ordering ends above 15 million. The unluckiest survivor crawls across the 30-year line with $1,835. The same 30 numbers produced endings 4 orders of magnitude apart, and the only input that varied was the order. Now sort those 10,000 runs by one thing only, how the first 5 years went. In the best fifth, the orderings where the early years were kind, the failure rate is 0%. Not low, 0. In the worst fifth, it's 20%, 1 in 5. The failures, on average, saw their first 5 years return roughly minus 1% a year. The survivors averaged about 13. Everything after the early window mattered so much less that it barely shows up in the data. That's the fragile window, a stretch of about 5 years around the moment withdrawals begin, in which the outcome of the next several decades is largely decided. The people inside it almost never know they're inside it. It doesn't feel different, it just is different. And here's what that means if you're in your late 30s or 40s. Your window hasn't opened yet. Whenever your money eventually has to feed you, by plan or by surprise, the 5 years after that moment will carry absurd weight, and everything you're about to see in the next 3 chapters is cheapest to set up before the window opens, not during it. Neil couldn't have known his first 3 years would be the worst 3. Nobody knows, which is why the answer isn't predicting the window, it's building for it. 3 levers. Lever 1 is called the floor, and it attacks the exact sentence the whole problem hangs on. A withdrawal in a down year forces you to sell shares at the bottom. The floor removes the word forces. The construction is simple. Before withdrawals ever begin, a few years of living costs get set aside in the dullest assets available: cash and short-term bonds. Money that cannot have a crash. Then one rule: when the portfolio is below its previous high, the withdrawals come out of the floor instead. The shares stay untouched, waiting for the recovery with their full count intact. When the portfolio makes new highs, the floor gets refilled. Notice what the floor is not. It isn't an investment. It will not beat anything. Held over 30 years, it's a drag. That's the premium on the insurance. Its entire job is to make sure the forced sale at the bottom, the single transaction that kills portfolios, never has to happen. So, does it save Neil? Here is the honest answer, and it's going to sound like a letdown. On his sequence, 3 crash years arriving immediately, then a 37% collapse in year 9. A 3-year floor moves his death from year 17 to year 19. 2 more years. His opening stretch is simply longer and crueler than any reasonable floor. Keep that result on the table. It's not a failure of the lever. It's a clue about the shape of the solution, and it's about to matter. Lever 2 attacks a different word in the killing sentence. The withdrawal itself. Everything so far assumed Neil withdraws his $50,000, plus a raise, every single year, no matter what the market is doing. Down 22%, full withdrawal, plus the raise. That rigidity is doing more damage than it looks like. Guardrails replace it with 2 rules a child could follow. After a down year, cut the withdrawal by 10% and skip the raise. After a good year, step back up toward normal. In our version, spending never falls below 3/4 of the original plan. This is a trim, not poverty. Run Neil again with guardrails alone. His death moves from year 17 to year 27. 10 additional years, purchased with a series of 10% trims in bad years. If that sounds disproportionate, a 10% cut buying a decade? Remember where the cut lands. Every dollar not withdrawn in a crash is a dollar's worth of shares that stays alive for the recovery. Guardrails work on the same mechanism as everything else in this video, just from the other side. But notice, year 27 is still a death. On this sequence, the floor alone buys 2 years and guardrails alone buy 10. Each lever, by itself, loses. Now stack them. Floor plus guardrails. Same brutal sequence. Neil survives the full 30 years and finishes with $1.2 million. The 2 levers cover each other's blind spot. The floor protects the shares in the short crashes. The guardrails slow the bleed through the long ones. Alone, each one dies. Together, the worst ordering of a whole generation of market history couldn't kill him. If the fact that 2 failing strategies combine into a surviving one is the kind of thing you want to keep seeing on this channel, the like button and a subscription are how you tell the algorithm that, and it genuinely does change what gets made. 1 lever left, and it's the one you can only set up in advance. Chapter 3. Proved the outcome is mostly decided in about 5 years. Lever 3 simply takes that finding literally. If only one window is dangerous, then only one window needs defending. The window defense means entering the drawdown years deliberately underweight in stocks. Say, 60% instead of everything. With the rest in the boring assets, and then re-risking once the window has closed. Permanent caution isn't the idea. Permanent caution over 30 years costs a fortune in growth. This is caution with a timer on it, concentrated exactly where the data said the danger lives. On its own, on Neil's sequence, it moves death from year 17 to year 20. A bigger effect than the floor, smaller than guardrails, still not survival. But add it as the 3rd lever on top of the other 2, and Neil doesn't just survive the worst ordering, he finishes it with $3.1 million. The man who, unprotected, was mathematically dead in year 11 ends 30 years a multimillionaire on the same returns, in the same order. And across all 10,000 orderings, the 3 levers together take the failure rate from 4.5% down to 0.1%. 1 ordering in 1,000. Not 0, hold that thought, but the coin flip from the beginning of this video is, for practical purposes, gone. The order still arrives however it wants to. It just no longer gets to decide. A video that stopped here would be lying to you by omission, so this chapter exists to keep the math honest. First, you may have heard of the 4% rule, the classic guidance that a 4% starting withdrawal is safe. Run a 4% style withdrawal through our same experiment on Neil's sequence, and he still goes broke. In year 28 instead of 17. Withdrawing less is a real lever, arguably the bluntest one of all, but on a bad enough sequence it only slows the failure. Across our 10,000 orderings, the 4% style version fails 0.8% of the time. Independent research points the same direction. Morningstar's retirement work in recent years has put the truly safe starting rate somewhere between 3.3 and 4%, depending on the year's conditions, which is a careful way of saying the same thing. There is no rate with a guarantee attached. Second, the levers have a price, and you should see it. Take Paul, the lucky ordering, and make him run all three levers anyway. He finishes with 7.2 million instead of 9.97. In the timeline where nothing goes wrong, the protection cost him nearly $3 million of upside. That's what insurance is. In the good timeline, it looks like waste, and you only find out which timeline you're in afterward. Third, our laboratory recycled one 30-year block of history. The future is under no obligation to shuffle the same deck. The percentages here are the results of a controlled experiment, not prophecies, which is why the title of this video contains the word almost. Nothing removes the last fraction of a percent, not the levers, not lower withdrawals, not anything sold by anyone. What the levers change is something better than a guarantee. They take the decision away from the order and hand it back to you. Unprotected, one man in 22 is ruined by pure arrangement. Protected, the order has to work to find you. Here's everything you now know that most people never will. Running out of money is an order problem, not an amount problem. The same returns in a different sequence can mean 10 million or zero. The mechanism is the forced sale. Withdrawals in down years destroy shares that can never participate in the recovery. The damage is decided early, in a fragile window of roughly 5 years after withdrawals begin, and it becomes irreversible in silence, years before the balance ever reads zero. Against that, 3 levers. The floor, so a down year never forces a sale. Guardrails, so the withdrawal bends instead of the portfolio breaking. The window defense, so the dangerous years are met underweight. Each one loses alone. Together, they turned the worst ordering of 30 years of market history from a bankruptcy into $3.1 million. The question most people ask about the future is, how much do I need? 30 years of identical returns just demonstrated that the number can be perfectly adequate and the ending can still be ruin. The question that actually contains the answer is the one almost nobody asks. What happens on the day the flow reverses? And the useful time to answer it is now, while your window is still closed. If you want to go deeper than a video can, the Wealth Logicians membership includes the full vault of working tools this channel builds its videos with. The same models, open inputs, your numbers. Link below. The math is on the table. Run yours before it runs you.